Hi there. Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Fires. I'm one of the senior living counselors here at RiverWoods, and we thank you for joining us this afternoon with our presentation, 10 Warning Signs of Alzheimer's, which is presented by Ann Romney and the Alzheimer's Association. We do have a large group that's joining us, so I'm just going to give a few minutes for those people to join. We're hoping it's a rainy day out there, so more people are going to join our presentation. But you will also be receiving a recording of this and also the handouts as well. So let us begin. I'll have some housekeeping slide to go over here, just to give you a little information.
Let me,
Okay.
are you seeing that?
Um,
No, what? I think it got paused. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Let's get that back. I don't know how that happened. You know what? I'm sorry to have to do that, but I think I had to stop share. I think I clicked on the wrong thing. So let's get right back to there. And are you seeing it now?
I see it now.
Great.
Thank you, Ann. Well, again, thank you again for joining us this afternoon for the 10 Warning Signs of Alzheimer's presented by Ann Romney and the Alzheimer's Association. And just a few housekeeping. Just wanted to let everyone know you are on mute, but we do welcome questions. Throughout the presentation, you can submit questions through the Q&A, which is either at the top or bottom of your screen. So please, as we're going along, put in any questions that you may have for Ann. And as always, we love to have your suggestions on how we can improve our presentations. And if you have an idea for future topics, let us know. Obviously, this is a very important topic to people. We have a lot of people joining us today. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Kelly. There we go.
Okay, and before we begin, I'm just going to give you a little information about RiverWoods, especially those that are not familiar with our community. RiverWoods was founded by a grassroots group of Seacoast residents around a kitchen table led by our founders, Rosemary Coffin and Mariana Hatch. They wanted a new way to retire to continue to live an engaged life with the promise of health care if and when it was needed in their future. And that dream was realized with the opening of our first campus in 1994 in Exeter, New Hampshire. And now today, we're a family of charitable, not-for-profit, continuing care retirement communities, also known as a CCRC or Life Plan community. Our three campuses today are RiverWoods Exeter, RiverWoods Manchester, and RiverWoods Durham, which make up the RiverWoods group system. And each community provides purpose, peace of mind to a number of growing adults in our community. And our communities continue to have strong financial performance and are fiscally conservative. And we also have award-winning assisted living with a positive culture and a reputation in our community for providing exceptional care to our residents. Next slide, please. And something I wanted to point out, often people are not aware that we do provide a direct admission opportunity here at RiverWoods Durham. So we do allow people living outside our community to come directly into our assisted living, memory support, and our nursing center. So we do have 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in our assisted living. We offer a number of amenities and services, especially 3 meals at our wonderful dining at Rosemary's Restaurant, providing daily educational and recreation programs for residents, complimentary transportation services as well, weekly housekeeping, laundry services, and especially access to 24-hour nursing. And in particular, our memory support at Newfound Lodge was created in a small household neighborhood. So there's 12 private suites to each neighborhood, and residents share a common living room, dining room, and kitchen, as well as have access to a beautiful courtyard with raised garden beds. And our memory support zone provides a supportive, caring neighborhood designed with the needs of each resident in mind, really focusing on that person-centered care and we especially train professionals that support a positive sense of personhood. And I just wanted to speak about some of the adaptive and therapeutic activities that we're using here at RiverWoods Durham in our memory support. And they're designed to promote self-worth and enhance our residents' quality of life. And Ann, I'm not sure if you've heard of some of these, but we're currently using a sound blanket sleep program, which is a program that's an evidence-based, non-pharmacological audio system that promotes restful sleep for older adults. And the system promotes restorative sleep and enhances overall well-being through personal soundscapes. So that's something that we're piloting here now. We also have electronic plush baby seals, and the seals respond to and interact with resident voice and touch. And we have a Moby, which is really a wonderful program. It's an interactive and immersive sensory table and floor projector, and this allows residents to enjoy different sensory enhancement programs. And we also have It's Never Too Late, IN2L, and this is a computer and audio system on wheels that can provide programs to large groups, small groups, or provide one-on-one programming. And they include travel, trivia, music, educational programs, and games. So we're doing just a lot of innovative things to really help our residents suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Amazing, amazing offerings.
It really is. In this slide, of course, is really one of our adult daughters just describing her experience with her mother living in our memory support here at RiverWoods Durham. So again, I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, and I would love to introduce our speaker, Ann Romney. Has an incredible background here. Ann Romney has been a volunteer presenter for both Maine and New Hampshire and Massachusetts chapters of the Alzheimer's Association for the past 15 years. And she has a background in education and group facilitation, and she's used her own personal experience with dementia in her own family to provide professional skills to help support others who are dealing with this enormous challenge. In addition to presenting programs, Ann has led legacy storytelling programs that bring people in the early stage of dementia together with student scribes who listen and write up the memories that are shared. Ann has been training in support groups for caregivers and sees each program as an opportunity to both educate, support, and provide resources to those who participate. And Ann has a master's in education and counseling from Lesley University and lives in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Thank you, Ann, and I'm glad you're going to be educating us more today.
I'm so glad to be able to be here, Kelly, and I really thank RiverWoods for including the Alzheimer's Association as much as you have in allowing us to present information to people who are already living there and people who are considering living there. And I am so impressed with these state-of-the-art offerings that you have, because I really was not familiar with that, and I think it's extraordinary, and I want to learn more about those things myself. But I will say that just briefly, the reason I do this with the Alzheimer's Association is through my own family. My father had Alzheimer's disease. He's been gone now for over 15 years, but there were not these kinds of options for him at the time. So it's very, very exciting to learn about this. My parents did live in a similar type of community, an extended care community in a different state, but they did not have this kind of memory facility at the time. And I think it's extraordinary what's happening. I think these are wonderful options. So I'm glad that people are here and that I have a chance to talk a little bit about one of the things that we get asked about so often, which is this just a normal age-related kind of thing that's happening, or is this something that is Alzheimer's or another form of dementia? So we're going to really focus on that today. This is one of our foundational programs. We have many, and at the end of this program, I'll go over more of the resources that the Alzheimer's Association has. But this is one of our very basic programs so that people who are beginning to wonder about their own cognitive health and that of loved ones this is what we want to address here today for all of you. So the objectives of this particular program is we're going to talk about what is typical, and we all have age-related moments. We all forget the name of somebody or where we put our keys and all those kinds of things. So what are the typical things that happen, whether it's memory, thinking, or behavior? And then how does that differ from what we start to wonder about a actual diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. We're going to talk about these common warning signs. Everybody's different, but there are some consistent kinds of things that we see. We'll talk about tips for approaching someone. This is a very difficult and delicate topic. There's a lot of fear and denial, which makes a tremendous amount of sense. So we'll talk about how do you have these conversations? How do you approach someone or even your own self about wondering what might be happening? We'll talk about how important early detection is for so many different reasons, and we'll get to that. We'll talk about the different tests and assessments that exist for diagnostic process. We recently, maybe some of you have actually read that very recently, within the last month, a blood test has been established that can determine Alzheimer's disease. This, I'm not sure how readily available this is, but this is a really important development because it makes it so much easier. Many, many years ago, there really wasn't a way to detect Alzheimer's disease. There now have been ways with scans and spinal fluid and different more invasive or complicated ways. So a blood test is a game changer. And then we're going to talk about the resources that the Alzheimer's Association has, and they are always without any charge, and they are plentiful. So we'll make sure people are aware of that. We're going to begin our program through a family that I think represents a very typical process of when a family is struggling to figure out what might be happening to a loved one. In this case, Mary, a 73-year-old widow, she's living alone, was a teacher. She's always been very meticulous in her home. She has 2 daughters. Lydia has been noticing things are different. Laundry's piling up. There's junk mail and old newspapers lying around. So she's beginning to wonder. She's the eldest of her 2 daughters, and she lives very near Mary. And oftentimes we have these dilemmas in families where some of the adult children are nearby and some are not nearby, and different people have different ideas of what might be happening. So we have Mary and we have Lydia, and we also have Patricia, who lives in another state, working long hours. She isn't able to visit, so she has less of an idea of what's happening, but she talks on the phone or through text often with her sister and her mom. So here's a little text conversation going back and forth between the sisters. I'm worried about mom. She keeps losing things. The house is a mess. Probably normal to get a little forgetful with age. Yeah, but it's so unlike her. Should we worry? And they're lucky because they have their neighbor, Dr. Salloway, who happens to be an expert neurologist in this subject. So we'll hear from him.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody, and it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names, and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things, but not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And it begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
So that's one of the distinguishing aspects, is when we notice that it's really becoming a factor in how people are functioning in their day. The way I was at a conference, and the way a scientist described this, he used the metaphor of a computer. If we think of our brains as computers that have a lot of information, and if you have an older computer that is slowing down, that's a typical age-related kind of thing where it's just not working quite as fast and it's not retrieving that information quite as fast, but you can get that. It's there to be gotten. But when a person has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, they may not even begin to know how to look into the computer, where they might have filed it and what they're even looking for. So it's kind of a useful way of sort of doing an analysis, a little quick self-analysis. So we have 3 different people we're going to hear from talking about the disease, all professionals, not actors, but people who are actually working in this field. And we'll start with Dr. Heather Snyder.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, And Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
And that is a question that we often get, which is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and
More
dementia?
than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we now call the formation of plaques and tangles. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and impacts memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to brain tissue loss and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as memory loss, behavioral issues, problems with thinking, planning, and at the end stage, swallowing.
So what's important to recognize is also that Alzheimer's is not just a disease of memory, but that it does affect our executive functioning skills, the ability to problem solve, to make decisions, and personality changes as well. I also, I'd like to stress at this point that in the beginning, particularly, people look exactly the same. So we often don't understand that there's an issue. We think the denial that we have that something's going on is easy to do because the person looks the same. If a person broke their leg and had a cast, we would understand why they were walking slowly. In the case of Alzheimer's, what we need to understand is that the brain actually is physiologically changing and diminishing in size. In advanced Alzheimer's, a person's brain can be literally 1/3 to 1/2 the size of its original size. So it's important to recognize that even though a person may look quite the same, we need to have empathy and understand that this is a physiological disease that is happening to them. Let me get my next slide.
More than 100 years ago,
I want to get on to, let me get back to this third person, if I can. Go to Ruth. Oh. Let me see. I'd like to get her to hear what she has to say. Can we? Yes.
it's important to know what the warning signs of Alzheimer's are and to be on the lookout. We know that we change over time, and the warning signs of Alzheimer's can be warning signs of a number of things. But when you see those in yourself or in someone you care about, it's important to check it out, to consult with a doctor, to find out what you're dealing with. Some of the things that can look like Alzheimer's may be other treatable conditions. If it is Alzheimer's, you still want to know as early as possible because that gives the person and the family time to plan, time to make decisions, and it also gives the person with the disease a voice and allows them to say what they want.
Such an important piece. Early on, a person can say to you, I do want you to help me figure out who that is or help me finish my sentence, or I don't want you to do that. I want you to wait and let me work it out. And so many other decisions around care and finances. There's so many reasons to have the conversation early. We know this is so difficult for caregivers. We have many, many programs that are really focused on the caregiving that is associated with dealing with people, loved ones, who have dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or another form. So it really can help you be a caregiver to know what's happening early on and allow that person to be included in some of the very difficult decisions that have to be made. So we will go on now. And now we're going to start to dig deep into what these different warning signs are. Important to say here that everybody is different and there isn't one size fits all. It's unlikely that someone would have all of these different things, but you begin to put a puzzle together by observing these different common characteristics that we see. When I first read this information many, many years ago, after my father had been diagnosed and I read these things, it was almost like check almost each one. It was astonishing to sort of say, oh, yep, that's happening too. So it is helpful to know what these things are, and to try to put that puzzle together early on. So we're going to talk each one, to go through each of them and talk about what would be a typical age-related memory loss type of thing in this example, and where does it get to be more of a concern and a red flag. So possible sign of dementia is forgetting recently learned information. That is absolutely so that people with Alzheimer's disease will remember things from way back. They may be able to tell you the name of all of their neighbors when they were a child on the street that they grew up in, but not be able to tell you who was just in the room 3 minutes ago telling them something. So we know that short-term memory is a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. Other things that go along with that: forgetting important dates or events, asking the same question over and over again. That again is one of the hallmark aspects, the repetition. And important to say that these things can be difficult to be around. They can be frustrating. You really kind of want the person not to keep repeating something. Again, a reminder that this is not something that they can control. So it typically is true if you say to someone, please don't say that again because you just said that, they won't say that, they will say, I didn't just say that. So they're not aware. That's just an important takeaway for folks. And also a reason why it's really important to have support when you're caregiving, because it's hard on so many different levels. So asking the same question over and over, relying on writing things down, or asking family members to remind them of things that they used to be able to do. And that's another aspect. If someone's always been kind of spacey and not good at remembering their to-do list, that may not be a sign for them. If it's someone who's always been meticulous about that and very capable in that way, that's something that you would notice and say, this is uncharacteristic. This is a change. What's a typical age-related change around this? We all forget names or appointments, but then we remember. If somebody calls and said, oh, you were not at your dentist appointment, chances are you say, oh my gosh, I was looking at the other week, I was looking at next week, or you remember this. So we'll talk now also about the second one, challenges in planning or problem solving. So some people will experience changes. They are working on a familiar recipe and they can't remember how to do it, or money is often something that shows up rather early, not being able to balance their checkbook or account for where they had their money, and paying bills gets mixed up. Things around finances are often something that shows up rather early. Having a hard time concentrating, taking longer. You may notice this about yourself or your loved one. This doesn't mean that every time we make errors when we're doing our balancing our checkbook or paying a bill, we forget to pay a bill. That is not an alarm in and of itself. It's again, it's about a pattern of things that are starting to show up. We're going to hear in this program from people who have dementia and are talking about their experience. It's very valuable to hear from these folks. Roughly 50% of people that have Alzheimer's disease are aware and able to talk about it. And there's a roughly other half of people who do not ever acknowledge it. We don't know if it is the disease itself or a denial or both. My dad was in that camp where he never ever acknowledged it. He was a physician. We think he must have known particularly early on what was happening, but he never acknowledged it. But these wonderful people are able to talk to about what they're
I was
experiencing.
probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Because of I would lose my thought, I'd lose my focus, I'd get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was thinking this, I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was what I was trying to remember, which was what I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was really a vicious circle. So I was able to control it a lot so that people wouldn't see things, and that there weren't things to be seen. It's what was disturbing me was what effort I had to put into to do the things I used to do more easily.
You can just imagine how exhausting and difficult and frightening it is to be going through all of that, and to be wondering what's happening. The third warning sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks. This happens often. They may be driving somewhere and forget where they're going, even though it's somewhere they've often gone. They can't organize their grocery list. They may be playing a card game or another board game that they don't remember how to play, even though they've played it many times. Typically, of course, we all need help doing something that we don't do very often, microwave setting or recording a show or any number of things on the computer that we now do all the time. We may not remember them. That would not be in and of itself a warning.
Some people have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. Once again, this is change in that person. So, for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, or not able to balance their finances, that would be a sign for them.
Right. So that's important to recognize the difference. What is new and different for that person? Confusion with time or place. This can be very bewildering for people. They may have really a very poor sense of time unless it's something happening right there and then. They may be very confused about where they are, even how they got there. They may think they're in a different location. They may think they're in a different state. They may say they want to go home when in fact they are home because the home that they imagine is not where they are right now. So that is an aspect to this that we see, and it has ramifications, of course, in terms of all sorts of things, but weather-wise, if they think it's the summer and they go out with a coat on or vice versa. So really important that we address and support people that are struggling with that. Typically, of course, many of us say, is it Wednesday? Is it Thursday? This week seems to be taking a long time. We don't know what day it is for a bit, but then we figure it out. So that would not be a concern in and of itself. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, number 5. This is important because driving, of course, is a very big concern with people who have cognitive decline, memory issues, not just because they may get lost where they're going, which is an obvious connection that we might make, but also because their judgment around spatial things is impacted. So sometimes what we start to see early on is that people have little dings in the car that they can't explain, or they're hitting the driveway wall as they're driving in. They have just unexplained things that are happening, and you can be in the car with someone and notice that they're straggling the line. They're not really paying attention to some of the street signs or the stop signs, lights, etc. So they can have visual problems and spatial problems. So they may have, and this can affect their balance, their ability to read, judging distance, determining color, etc. Of course, typically we all have some changes to our vision and to our balance and to some of these spatial things as we age. But again, is it a pattern and is it interrupting?
Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory. It can affect other things too. It can affect the way that we perceive what we see. So sometimes somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's might go to the eye doctor because they're having trouble seeing, and in fact, their vision is just fine, but the way they're perceiving what they're seeing may be difficult.
And that's a very important thing. So sometimes it gets picked up in the course of doing an eye exam. New trouble, number 6. Yes?
I just wanted to acknowledge some people are having a difficulty with some of the video. The audio is not coming clearly through, but I just wanted, we're still getting you're coming through just fine. So I just want to acknowledge that's the group who are people who are putting that in the Q&A.
That's happening. I don't know
Yeah.
why that's happening, but I'm glad at least you're hearing me, and I'll try to
Yes.
like fill in for the videos.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
new problems, thanks for letting me know, Kelly. New problems with words in speaking or writing. So people with Alzheimer's often start to, for personality changes, start to withdraw, but they also may have a hard time with words, and so they're feeling very insecure in conversation. They may stop right in the middle of the conversation and have no idea where they were. Again, that repetition that we know. They may struggle with vocabulary, so they may know that their watch, for example, is associated with time, but they may not know what it's called. So they may point at their watch and say, you know, my time thing stopped here. So they're not getting the word recall that they had. So trouble naming a familiar object. And sometimes we all struggle that way now and then, but it's the pattern that we want to avoid. I'm going to play a video and I'll try to recap it afterwards if it's not being heard.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, you know, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
Yeah, that was just Phil explaining how difficult it is as a reader, as a writer. Words had been a huge part of his life, and he is now struggling with words. So for him, that's a very big battle and hurdle to get through. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. That's again one of the things where we all put things down. We don't know where we put something, we're walking around looking for our phone or our keys and that sort of thing. That is a very typical age-related change that many of us go through. And if we're distracted or stressed out, it can be worse. A person with Alzheimer's, though, may put things in such an odd place, really be unable to even think about where they might be. And because of that, we often unfortunately see a little bit of behavioral reaction where they may feel that people are taking from them, stealing from them, and because they have absolutely no recollection of ever having had their purse, for example, or put it anywhere and it's missing, then they think someone has taken it, which is, of course, very stressful and very hard for you, if you're with that person, to try to assure them that that did not happen. So we'll see if this little video will play.
So some people wonder if, you know, if they lose their keys or their glasses or their purse, is that a sign of Alzheimer's? And one thing that I would say about that is for most of us, we might misplace something, but then if we retrace our steps, we can usually find it. We can usually remember. For a person with Alzheimer's, sometimes they're not able to retrace their steps. Sometimes that memory is just gone. And so when they do find their keys next to the phone because they got interrupted by a phone call when they were coming in. They set their keys down in an unusual space. And there they are next to the phone. To you or me, we'd probably remember, oh yeah, the phone was ringing when I came in the door. I put down my keys. The person with Alzheimer's might not remember. They might wonder who's moving their keys around because they never put their keys by the phone. So that's just a little bit of a difference in some of the dynamics with losing things in Alzheimer's.
Right. So every time you lose something, I have people often ask me, well, I lost something. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's disease? Certainly not. Again, it's about the whole puzzle and putting things together. And so that video was just really reiterating all of that, that we can't, people with dementia often can't retrace and get back to what it was that they might have misplaced. The number 8 is decreased or poor judgment. And this is, again, what we see with financial decisions. Oftentimes, somebody will repeatedly buy the same thing over and over again. We have an entire program on money and finance with dementia that talks about how we can help and support people so that damage doesn't happen. And there are scams that can happen, or people just misusing money and writing checks to things and really not having the proper judgment. So there are lots of different things that people, caregivers, can do, especially today with a lot of online tools, and you can get notifications from credit card companies and things. So really important, but that is a very common thing that we see. And we also see sometimes grooming changes where a person who's always been very meticulous about themselves will stop shaving or only shave part of their face, or you'll see things on someone's clothing that they would never have allowed their clothing to be dirty in that way. So if you observe some of these things, that could be something that's part of the puzzle. Certainly, we all typically do make bad decisions and forget to do different things we need to do, or we spill something on a shirt and we don't have time to clean it. So that would not be a concern in and of itself.
The way I kept my house, and all of a sudden, everything was okay with me. It's like, oh, it's a pile, I'm tired. So my dining room table usually look like it was someone's office, because I always would say I would do it tomorrow. And then my bedroom, as far as clothing, I would just put it in a corner, put it in a chair. And all of this is just, I wouldn't say it looked like I was a pet wreck, but really I was, because I never threw anything away. I always would say, I'll get to it, but I never did get to it. So just the way of my standard of living, it was actually decreasing.
And the takeaway here, if you could hear Teresa, she's someone who was always very, very organized prior to dementia. And then she sort of stopped caring and things were piling up and she just was letting it go. But the other thing I want you to observe there with Teresa is her age. Teresa is not someone that we typically think of as somebody with dementia. She's young. I don't know exactly what her age is, but she's in maybe her 40s, 50s at the very latest. And sadly, she has what we call early onset, not early stage, because there are 3 stages to Alzheimer's disease: early, middle, and late, sometimes known as mild, moderate, and severe, interchangeably. But early onset means somebody under the age of 65 develops Alzheimer's disease. And sadly, there are far fewer people for whom that's true, because age is the greatest risk. But people do, and it is a very, very sad and even more tragic kind of experience, because they're still working and maybe they still have kids they're trying to put through college and all kinds of things. So that is a very particular hardship. Number 9, withdrawal from work or social activities. This, we talked a bit earlier about having a hard time holding or following a conversation, and just knowing that their processor is not working the way it used to. A person can naturally just sort of withdraw, lose interest, be very uncomfortable keeping up with things. So we start to see that kind of a disinterest, which can be very unsettling. And people try very hard to keep their loved one engaged, and they try to pull on the things that have been of interest. My dad was a huge baseball fan, so I would often try to talk about baseball with him, and he had no interest. I couldn't engage him around that subject. So often we are trying very hard to engage our loved ones, and sometimes we will notice that we have to really get creative, because what we think will work won't necessarily work. We all go through different types of days when we feel less social, or we don't feel like being outgoing or getting involved. But that's an exception, not the thing that's happening a lot.
One of the most common changes and early on is the person's comfort zone shrinks a little bit, and then that gets worse throughout the course of the illness. So they're less comfortable going out, they're less motivated to do things than they were in the past. So there's some change in day-to-day functioning that way. I think people also lose confidence in their cognitive abilities, because they may not recognize someone or know their name or find the right word, and they'll feel awkward, and they don't want people to notice that, so they feel more comfortable at home or in situations with family where they're very, very comfortable with that wouldn't concern them. So people tend to withdraw a little bit and be less outgoing. Can be one of the early signs of Alzheimer's.
So Dr. Salloway is talking about a shrinking comfort zone where people are pulling back because they aren't confident of their cognitive functioning. It's also true that friends will often pull away because they're uncomfortable or afraid and not sure what to say. It's really, we encourage people to let people know and bring them in to fight the stigma that people might feel around this disease, and to not go it alone, but let your friends understand. And there are ways that they can interact and make good eye contact and try to still keep that person in the conversation for as long as possible. So we have other programs that address those kinds of things. The 10th sign is changes in mood and personality. We've touched on this a little bit already, that people can become confused, suspicious, depressed, anxious. We know this can be true. While there are very few medications, and we're really on the stage, we're calling it the age of treatment, where we're beginning to have some things that can actually perhaps affect the course of the disease. But there are some kinds of things that can also be done just around depression, anxiety. Those things can be treated. There are things we can do non-medically to try to diminish the impact, but there are medications that can help with some of those things. But we might see a person easily getting upset when they are out of that comfort zone, or if they're in an overwhelming location with a lot of noise, something like an airport or a shopping mall where things are overwhelming. There are things we can do to minimize some of those things that affect their mood and personality. Of course, always we all typically can have some days when we feel particularly irritable or upset. That is a natural thing.
Another early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia is subtle changes in behavior. So all of a sudden, the family may notice the person is more easily irritated, or more impatient, or a little moody, or have a shorter fuse, or more anxious. Now, there's lots of things that can cause that, but often that can be an early symptom of Alzheimer's or go along with the early symptoms of memory loss.
Right. So we pay attention to that. So here we have them all. These are the 10 warning signs. Every one is individual, but you start to look at these, and we have handouts that go along with this program that people will get that will have this information there. But if you are noticing these signs, whether it's within yourself or with someone else, it is important to start to take notes, observe, and go and get a workup to try to figure out what might be happening. And as one of the videos said, there are reversible conditions that do cause cognitive decline and memory loss. A urinary tract infection is one of the famous things for making people really confused. It can be medications that are out of whack, a thyroid that is out of whack. Alcohol consumption. There are other things that can cause what appears to be memory loss or cognitive decline. So it is important to get it checked out and to figure out what is happening. So once you are in that process of trying to interpret and decide what to do, here's where some of that will go. The sisters are now talking. Did you look at the information? I did, but I don't know. Mom still shows a couple of signs, but not all the time. How do we know? So we're going to hear from Dr. Salloway again.
Memory is not all or none, especially when there are early symptoms or signs. So on a good day, people might function very well and not really even, no one notices there's a memory problem. But on other days, especially if they're tired, then things become more noticeable. So memory is variable. It's not all or none. And then there are different types of symptoms that develop for each person. So some people may have trouble with language, may have trouble with organizing themselves, may have trouble navigating while driving, and other people don't have the same symptoms. So you don't have to have every symptom of Alzheimer's to be concerned. And I think the most important thing is determining what has changed from that person's normal level of functioning. And usually people have a pretty keen sense of, what they can normally do well. And then when either they or the family notice that there has been some change from that usual pattern of functioning, that should be a warning sign to people, but they don't have to check off all the boxes.
Yeah, so Dr. Salloway is basically saying that there are good days and bad days, that not everybody goes in a straight linear path, so that they may appear to be confused one day and much less so the next day. So you might be saying, well, maybe there isn't anything going on and you're confused yourself about what might be happening. And that he makes the point that not everybody has all of these things, that everybody's different. And some people may be not affected by any of those things at all, but that doesn't mean it's not dementia. So you can't rule it out. It's important to figure out and get to a professional to get a workup and figure out what's happening. That's the most important takeaway. So we're going to move into a different section, but just to recap around the specific 10 signs, these are a guide. It's not a checklist, and you have to check each one. There may be one or multiple signs in varying degrees from different individuals, and that if you're noticing these things, it is important to check it out. It could be something reversible, and very important to know what is going on. So we're going to talk a little more about that and why is it so important, this early detection that we keep talking about, and we're going to hear.
It's a very interesting phenomena that people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than family members or their friends who know them well. One of the reasons for that is our ability to monitor ourselves, which is an important part of brain function, decreases when we start having memory problems. Not in everybody, but commonly, in more than half the people with memory problems. So the person is just not keeping track of the trouble they're having day to day. But the family members are, paying attention. If they're paying attention, they see, boy, this is starting to happen a lot. And the person's not aware of it. So the family's more aware, and they may talk to their loved one about it. And they say, I've noticed you've been repeating yourself. They say, I'm not repeating myself. And that could either be due to the fact that they're not aware of it, or they may not want to acknowledge it.
Right. So he's basically talking about how different people are aware that the disease itself can make people aware, not aware, and that it's very difficult to talk about it, but that we need to be observing and we'll talk soon about having a conversation with people that we think it may be
I
happening.
was all adamant about what was happening to Daryl. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And this wasn't the person that I know. This wasn't the person. Daryl was my husband was very, he always had to be building or designing or working with his hands. And it was getting to the point where he wasn't, and he was becoming very frustrated when he was forgetting to do things or go places.
So Mary's noticing big changes in her husband. So this is a handout that you will actually also be getting. It's a 10-step approach to memory concerns if you're having these concerns. And we are going to walk through these different steps so that we can give you a bit of a guideline around how you would approach this. The first thing is to observe and literally keep track, write down the things that you're observing. If you, when you do get to a medical professional, it's very, very helpful to have a record that you have of the things that you've observed. And we encourage you to get other people to give input to that are aware of your loved one and may observe different things than you observed. What else is going on? Have there been illnesses, stressors? When people are very stressed out, it really can impact their cognitive functioning. So what are the situations that may be playing a role in what you're observing? So the greater environment. Be aware about the signs as you are learning about today and the benefits of early diagnosis, which is all part of why we're doing the workshop today. Check in with others. Have other people notice these things? You may find often different adult children will have very different takes and observations about their parents, if it's one of the parents. And sometimes the family dynamic gets involved, and it's part of what you have to work through is getting people on the same page and supporting each other as you go through this. Now, having the conversation, and it is not, if I was to have made this slide, I would say have the conversations plural, because it's not a one and done type of conversation. This is something that you approach gently and revisit. So you want to consider who should have the conversation to discuss concerns. Should all of the adult kids be there, or just one, or a trusted friend, another relative, a medical person? What is the best time and place to have the conversation? So you really want to be thoughtful about that, because it's a very weighted topic. You wouldn't want to be just leaving and sort of shout out the door, the next time I'm here, we have to talk about dementia. I think you might have dementia. That would not be the way you would want to approach the subject. You need to approach it thoughtfully and carefully when there's plenty of time and the person is feeling relaxed and open. Think about what you'll say and how you will approach it. Sort of rehearse in your mind, put some notes down on how you want to approach the topic. And it's always coming from a place of your caring and your empathy. And it's helpful to acknowledge that this is not an easy topic, but something really important. You can offer to go with the person to the doctor. I think that happens often certainly in families or in husband and wives. will often go with each other to the doctor. And to me, it is needed. You do have multiple conversations. I've never heard of anyone that had one conversation about this and it was all figured out and the strategy and where they were going to go next was all clear. I think this is a long-term ongoing conversation. And it's really important to get support. There's lots of resources out there in your community, organizations like the Alzheimer's Association. If you're living in a memory care facility, such as RiverWoods, there's support there that you can take advantage of. And we have lots of information at the Alzheimer's Association. So we're going to walk through some of the steps around seeing a doctor. What people typically start with their primary care provider, who have become better versed in this sort of diagnostic process, but traditionally were not so great about this. But they are starting to recognize more and more. The numbers are surging. We're moving towards 7 million people in this country that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's in a particular year. So specialists are also can be part of the evaluation, which can include, I won't read out this list to you, but there they are, different types of specialists that may play a role. And we're going to talk a little bit more again about this, the benefits of that early detection.
There are a number of benefits in early detection of Alzheimer's. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans. They can live life more on their own terms. They can also make plans for the future, financial plans, care plans. They can let people know what they want, which can be a real gift later on. It also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those kinds of issues. Some people are interested in clinical trials. Clinical trials allow people to have access to treatments that aren't available yet. And for some people, that can be a really important thing to pursue.
So Ruth is saying that the reason we do early detection is a number of reasons. The person gets to have a say in what they want and what they need and where they feel comfortable being cared for. The families get time to plan. This is a big financial impact when people have a diagnosis of dementia. There are other, who's going to be part of the care team. We encourage people to have a care team. And individuals react very differently. She gives the example of some people want to spend time and do the things that they've simple things, keep life the same and spend time with their grandchildren. Some people want to go and travel and do other things. So it's really important to know what you've got going on and how to approach it as a family. So just to recap that, we want to, in terms of early detection, pay attention to the things that you're observing, not just memory, but different functioning, thinking, behavior, see if it's unusual for that person and take action by starting to approach that conversation. You want to talk about discuss that the types of concerns can be difficult. And we have that guide that you can use, and that there are a number of benefits, including the opportunity to plan. And she also did mention participating in clinical studies. There are pharmaceutical clinical studies and also life kinds of things, exercise, nutrition, social engagement, different ways in which people, that they do studies around how people live with cognitive decline, but also how to prevent the onset of cognitive decline. So it's important when people are actually going ahead and seeking a diagnosis. We have a little question here, a couple of different questions in this program. The question is it true or false that there's currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease? Well, we gave that away already. There are a number of different assessments and tests that make it possible, many more, and including this newest blood test. So here are some of the things that people can get. I won't read it all to you, but you can see, including screening for depression, lab tests, etc., brain imaging, spinal fluid tests, etc. And I think we've talked about this already as well. Dementia-like symptoms, do they always result in a diagnosis of dementia? And people are wondering and dealing with this question, and we know that it is not always so.
Someone could have high blood pressure that's out of control, or they might have a thyroid condition that's not regulated, or diabetes that's not right, or on a medication that actually can cause memory loss. Drinking too much alcohol can make memory worse. So there are a lot of factors that go into cognitive difficulty with aging that some of them can be remedied. And so we want to do everything we can to improve cognitive ability and quality of life.
Yeah, so it's all about trying to improve quality of life, and there are other reversible reasons that people develop dementia, or cognitive decline, I should say, correct myself. So the experience will be varied depending on your primary care or the first person that you see. They will recommend certain steps for you to take. It can be something other than Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And we really do need to fight the stigma and misconceptions about the disease, like the idea that nothing can be done, which is what often keeps people from trying to learn. If this is happening, they figure there's nothing they can do anyway, and that is not the case. And there are so many things that need to be managed that we can and should take care of. So we do need to know what we're up against. And what do you do if you do get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease? They're talking back and forth. The diagnosis in this case of their mom is early stage Alzheimer's. So that means she's moved beyond that pre-stage, which is mild cognitive impairment, and they feel that she has enough going on that it would qualify for early stage diagnosis. And what do they do now? There are different resources that the Alzheimer's Association has, and other ways to get support as well. So the Alzheimer's Association, we are nationwide. I'm not going to spend much time on that slide, but we do have 3 distinct ways of engaging with us. There is a helpline 24/7. I recently just gave this number to a neighbor's daughter who called the helpline with great success. These are social workers that answer the calls. These are not telephone operators, and they can guide you through a whole range of things, from an emergent situation that might be happening right there and then to something which is more far-reaching around different care options, residential programs, such as directing you to RiverWoods. Where can you get some legal support, elder care, advice? So there are all kinds of things. What kind of medications might work? Where can I learn more? Are there support groups, etc.? We have our website. I'm not going to play these videos because people are having a hard time anyway, so I will just talk through them. Online is a rich resource. Our website is wonderful for both people who have been diagnosed, to find other early stage folks to talk to and read things about. But for caregivers, we have a plethora of information on our website. And in our communities, we have a community resource finder. We're also working with the AARP to enhance and develop that, so people can go onto our website and go to the community resource finder. And so there's so much information out there.
I've had a couple of phone calls that I've been able to make in to the
I'm
call
going to
center.
skip the videos because I think that people are having a hard time with them. So there are different ways in which people can support the Alzheimer's Association. Our walk is our main fundraiser, and that happens typically in this area in the fall. People get in teams and walk and raise all kinds of money, which is really important. People volunteer, and with the walk or with other programs like what I'm doing here, presenting educational programs. So we are very heavily reliant on volunteer folks. We have advocacy so that federal funding, state funding continues to happen. We do know there are some changes right now on the federal level due to a lot of the cutting that's been going on. So unfortunately, some of the research is being diminished at the moment. So we really need to advocate hard for the continued funding, because Alzheimer's is really at a level that I don't think it's an overstatement to say there's a tsunami of people in terms of how many people are impacted. with the disease and their caregivers as well. Trial Match, we spoke about a little bit earlier around the different treatments that are out there, and through our web, you can call the helpline, or online, you can find out information or call your local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. The walk we mentioned, and we also have some other fundraisers. The Longest Day we just passed in June, which is kind of a do-it-yourself fundraiser where people bike or bake or dance, or they just do something that brings awareness and raises funds. So that is also something. And there's a bike to end Alzheimer's as well. And I actually did that bike ride on June 14th in the Hampton Beach area. So there are a number of different ways that people can get involved and raise awareness and funds. So we talked through that. And now I would like to stop and see if people have questions or comments that they can also choose to share with each other. I don't know what is on the Q&A, Kelly, but if there's something we can summarize.
Certainly, we do have some questions here, and I just want to thank you, Ann, for all your volunteerism and really being with us today. And people are finding this very helpful. And this is a really good question that Patricia has. Some of the symptoms that you talked about appear to be similar to depression. So how do you really tell the difference between the two, or can depression also be a result of dementia?
Both, Patricia, both. And that's the thing. There can be, it's very common for people who are experiencing cognitive decline to be depressed. And so it can happen but people can be depressed and not have cognitive decline. That's why it is important to if you go for a diagnostic workup, they will be able to determine, they can see these things through imaging, these plaques and tangles. Now with this blood test, there are things that can rule out the dementia piece, and then you deal with the depression. If it is dementia with associated depression, at least the depression can be addressed pretty directly.
Right. This is another great question to discuss the impact of hearing loss on memory loss, which I'm sure is very complex.
So glad that someone asked that question. And I'm not wearing my hearing aids, but I have because within the last few years, very recently, within the last even 3 years, they've come up with some studies that really show how important keeping your hearing going is in terms of keeping your brain stimulated and all those neurons firing, and that we should really get on top of it early and not wait until we really can't hear, but correct any hearing loss as soon as you're aware that you're having any hearing loss. And people I know, people are vain about it, or they don't want to wear their hearing aids, but they now really know that it's such a good thing to keep those brain neurons stimulating, and also in terms of staying connected to what's happening around you. If you are not hearing, you start to kind of pull back and you're not really engaged and you're isolating yourself. Just a huge shout out for hearing aids and people getting them and pushing through whatever discomfort they have around that. There are some affordable options now. The technology keeps getting better and better. So yes, there is a correlation, and don't fall into that. It's only for old people thing. We need to protect our hearing. It's going to help our brain health.
Right. Now, the next question is the Alzheimer's diagnosis a process of elimination? If one symptoms can be related to other diseases like hypothyroid or vascular issues, does a doctor need to eliminate these before recognizing dementia, or is there a test to find out if it is Alzheimer's?
Yeah, I don't think it used to be more of a elimination, and then left thinking, oh, it's probably that. And it literally was until a person died and there was an autopsy. There was never a definitive Alzheimer's diagnosis. That is not the case anymore. They can determine this through a number of direct kinds of assessments that we've outlined a bit. So some of these questions may have come in before we address some of that. But absolutely no, you do not just have to process of elimination get there. There is a way to absolutely determine that this is so. And there are other forms of dementia too. Vascular dementia is often something as a result of strokes, mini strokes or head trauma. There's a Parkinson's type related dementia that mirrors Parkinson's disease, and sometimes there's a confusion around diagnosis that it's Parkinson's. No, it's dementia. Oh, it's something both related. So there are different kinds of things that play in, but they know a lot now. They really know a lot.
They really do. And thank goodness. Again, we have someone here, Donna and Rick, were just saying thank you for this extremely informative, compassionate presentation and wishing they had something like this 15 years ago when her mother had Alzheimer's. So again, just all the research and all the new information that we have is so helpful to people. And Carolyn asked, are there any natural remedies that one can pursue? I know people talk about the Mediterranean diet, and she's just saying, um, preventative and so forth, and any other things that you're aware of.
For a while, the ginseng was a big thing, and then
Women.
you'll see these ads for Prevagen,
Yeah.
and things of that sort. It's the position of the Alzheimer's Association is to be very, very careful about some of these things. And we all want to do whatever we can, and it's natural to want to do natural things. There are correlations between just what is good for your heart is good for your brain. So eating a good diet, getting exercise, getting oxygen to your brain. Exercise is really important. Not drinking excessive alcohol, not smoking. The things that would be good, just think of things that are good for your heart. If you're taking care of your heart, you are taking care of your brain as well. So those are natural kinds of things that we should all be doing. And I can't really endorse or any of these other remedies that sometimes people are very, very interested in finding and promoting. I just don't, I think if it was really true that it would be out there and everybody would be taking it. So
Oh, wonderful. And somebody was just speaking of that, recommending a book, author of Still Me, Rebecca Chop, saying that that was a really hopeful and inspiring book. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
I am aware of that book, and there are some beautiful books out there. People that have told their own story. There's one, Alzheimer's from the Inside Out, which is a doctor who got diagnosed and wrote about his experience for as long as he could write about his experience. So we are learning from people who write their stories and tell their stories. And there are lots and lots of books that have been written. And I think my mantra with all of this, with every program that I do, is that it should not be something you try to deal with alone. Don't sort of pull in and feel that there's a stigma and you don't want to talk about it. There's support, there's information. Lots of people are going through this. And so it's just important to learn what's working for them and stay engaged with other people. Get a break. If you're a caregiver for someone with dementia, don't do it all alone. Too much.
Right. No, that's very good advice. And someone, Betsy asked, when will the blood test be available? And then just talking about, anxiety when you do go to the doctor and they're doing the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, how it's very intimidating for a lot of people, and maybe being able to do something like that in the privacy of your own home. But, just curious, maybe a blood test would be a little less apprehensive for people.
Well, that's true, and I can count myself in the people who get anxious when those things are thrown to me because I have family history, which is a risk factor. So I'm not loving when they give me those memory. I'm going to say these words, and you're going to tell me
Nobody likes to be tested, right?
testing is anxiety provoking. So I agree that
Yeah.
a blood test would be a much less anxiety provoking kind of thing to sit through. We still are going to worry about what our results are. I don't have the answer to the question of exactly when the blood test is available, but I know it's there and I know that it's been approved. And it may be, I will try to find out, but it may be being used already, but we're very close to it. I know that. And I don't think anybody wants to wait on anything with this because everybody's fighting hard to get on top of this. So I assume if it's out there and available, it'll be, people can take advantage of it.
Oh, I hope so too. Well, Ann, again, I know I want to apologize to our viewers. I know the audio is a little bit difficult, but thank you, Ann, for recapping all those audio, and again, we really appreciate again Ann Romney with the Alzheimer's Association, and just a wonderful wealth of knowledge because really, like you said, this really is a very serious topic, and again, if we can educate ourselves, we're going to be less fearful of loved ones and interacting with people who may have dementia and Alzheimer's. It's being educated.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And a shout out to places like RiverWoods where they are really on top of the state of the art, and really providing support that we weren't able to do for my dad back 15 plus years ago. So I think it's wonderful that these opportunities are there and great that you reach out to people with this information. So thanks for having me and good luck to everyone.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate you watching our presentation. Thank you.
Take care all. Sorry about the audio.